Welcome back. We're talking about building an enchanter. If you haven't seen my initial video, there will be a link to it in the comments section and in the video description. And that would talk about how to build the enchanter from levels 1 through 4. In this video, we are going to be focusing on levels 5 through 10. That's Tier 2 for Adventures League players. So let's take our enchanter to level 5. So level 5 is always a big level for any wizard, and with the enchanter, it's no different than any other wizard in the fact that we're not getting any new abilities here, so we're probably going to be looking at this level very similar to any other wizard subclass. And the reason why 5th level is important for wizards is because of the addition of 3rd level spells. And 3rd level spells are a massive increase in power level from the previous level. Now, when I'm looking at the spells for this character, what I want to do is I want to pick spells. Now, I could take Hypnotic Pattern with every wizard subclass, and I could take it with this one, and thematically, it's appropriate. And if you wanted to take Hypnotic Pattern, it's a good choice here. But with this character, I'm going to do a couple different things. The first one I'm going to do is I'm going to take Sleet Storm. Now, Sleet Storm, as far as battlefield control goes, in a lot of ways, it's the best at level 3, especially if you're dealing with large numbers of enemies, because the area of effect of a sleet storm is 40-foot radius. So that is absolutely massive. That's 80 feet across. That's 16 squares across. And it's centered anywhere we want within a 150-foot range, so it has a great range. The area is heavily obscured, so if we can use things like stealth and then enemies don't know where we are, and we can also, it covers the area in ice that creates difficult terrain, so it slows movement, but when they enter the area for the first time, or they start their turn there, including the first turn you cast a spell, then they make a dexterity saving throw or they fall prone. So then, if we think about debilitating the movement of our enemies, and we talked about that with 4th level with Flaming Sphere, but with Sleet Storm, just think about this. If you have an enemy, let's say you have a 30-foot movement, and you've fallen prone because of Sleet Storm, so then you have to get up, and that uses half your movement, and then you're moving through difficult terrain, you can move 1 square. So this can really, when you have a large group of enemies, really divide them, not just into 2 groups, but into multiple groups, as 1 or 2 trickle out of the Sleet Storm at a time. It's also pretty good against enemy spellcasters, because if an enemy spellcaster is concentrating on something, then you can wreck their concentration with the Sleet Storm. They have to make a concentration save against your spell DC, not the typical 10 that most concentration saves are made against. So the concentration save is significantly harder for them to make. And of course, because vision is obscured, any spells that would require line of sight are going to be messed up as well. So Sleet Storm, I think, works really well with this character, because what we can do is we can take a lot of enemies out of the fight, and so then that reduces our risk of getting in close to the enemies that are left. Now, I wouldn't be traveling into the Sleet Storm effect myself, because then I would be making the concentration saves, and I'd be falling prone, and I would have my movement impaired. So this is not for something over top of my character. And then the other spell I'm going to take is Slow, because again, we're talking about reducing enemies' movements, so then that can again make it safer for us to move in and use our Hypnotic Gaze while we're maintaining a concentration on this spell. And this is a better spell for when the enemies aren't all grouped together with no allies nearby. So I think mechanically, both these spells work really well with this character. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to unprepare the web spell. The Sleet Storm spell kind of takes its place, and then I'm going to be preparing Sleet Storm and Slow. So moving into level 6, we get another subclass ability. Now, as far as enchanters go, this isn't the best one they get, but it does boost our defense. And of course, we're looking for things that boost our defense, so I still think it's a strong addition to an enchanter. So the ability is Instinctive Charm, beginning at 6th level when we can see a creature within 30 feet that makes an attack roll against us. We can use our reaction to divert the attack. So note that it uses our reaction, which means it's not something we can use in combination with a shield or an absorb elements, provided that there is another creature within the attack's range. The attacker must make a wisdom saving throw against your wizard's spell save DC. On a failed save, the attacker must target the creature that is closest to it, not including you or itself. If multiple creatures are closest, the attacker chooses which to target. On a successful save, you can't use this feature on that attacker again until you finish a long rest. Now, that's important. It only can't be used against that specific attacker again. So we can use this many times between every long rest, as long as it's on different attackers. You must choose this feature before knowing whether the attack hits or misses. Creatures that can't be charmed are immune to this effect. So, when we are attacked by an enemy, when do we cast Shield, and when do we use Instinctive Charm? So, if you think you might be targeted with more than a single attack on your turn, use a shield, because the shield will help protect you against all the attacks. Instinctive Charm is only going to work against one attack. So if you think you might be attacked more than once, you need to use a shield. Now, if we think we're only going to be targeted with one attack, then it depends on your situation. Take a look at the enemy. Is there somebody else that they could attack that would be good for us to have them attack? If the answer is yes, I would use an Instinctive Charm over the shield. So certainly, if their only other applicable target is an enemy, Instinctive Charm is great, because not only if they fail their save do they not attack you, but then they're attacking their enemy, and that actually helps you. But even if the other applicable target is maybe your party tank, that still might not be too bad, because they are far less likely to hit, and if they hit, they're going to be hitting somebody who can probably take the damage a lot better than you. So that still might be worth it. So to some extent, there's some redundancy between Instinctive Charm and the defenses we already have, but this does create some versatility. It gives us another resource we can use. So when I'm playing a character that needs to be careful about defense, something like Instinctive Charm is a great addition. One more thing to note about Instinctive Charm is if a DM was to hit you with a critical hit, an Instinctive Charm can potentially foil that critical hit. With a shield, of course, it's never going to stop a critical hit, but an Instinctive Charm absolutely can stop a critical hit. Now, is it metagaming to use Instinctive Charm when you know that the critical hit has happened? Probably. So I would still follow good role-playing habits, where I would use an Instinctive Charm even if I know it's a critical hit, if I would have used that Instinctive Charm anyways. But I think if you see the 20 and then you decide at that point to do Instinctive Charm, I don't think that's a good player style, because you are metagaming. So I'm going to get to pick 2 additional spells at this level, and these are pretty much preset for me. I definitely always want to have Counterspell with any wizard I take, and then I pretty much always want to have Leomund's Tiny Hut with every wizard I take. Now, if you're playing in a campaign, again, where you maybe have a bard or something and they've taken Leomund's Tiny Hut, then you don't need it, right? Only one character needs it. Then I might look at something like Hypnotic Pattern, or I might look at something like Water Breathing. But barring that, Leomund's Tiny Hut, I think, is the right choice. So we don't need to prepare Leomund's Tiny Hut, so we just prepare our counter spell, and we don't need to change any of our other preparations. So 7th level then will give us access to our 4th level spells. And the 2 spells that really speak to me for 7th level, now these are not necessarily spells I'm going to keep prepared throughout the career of the character, but I think they serve me really well right now, is number 1, Polymorph, because Polymorph at 7th level is the best spell in the game. But the other one I want to take is Autoluke's Resilient Sphere. So Autoluke's Resilient Sphere is very versatile. We can use it offensively, we can use it defensively. Basically cover somebody in a wall of force, but unlike an actual wall of force, an enemy would get a saving throw to not be surrounded by it. But I do like it partially to use as a self-defense, because what does Hypnotic Gaze require? It requires that our target be able to see or hear us. They can see or hear us if we're in an Autoluke's Resilient Sphere. And we can move right up next to them. We don't have to worry about our defense. And then we can use our Hypnotic Gaze with impunity. Now, there might be some debate as to whether gaze effects, like Hypnotic Gaze, work through an Autoluke's Resilient Sphere or they work through a wall of force. And there hasn't been a definitive answer from the designers, but the way I read it, the fact that all that needs to happen is to see the creature and that these effects are invisible, I think it would work. And it's certainly, there's nothing in the rules that would make me think that it wouldn't work. So I do think Hypnotic Gaze should be able to work through an Autoluke's Resilient Sphere, but your DM will decide. But in my opinion, it absolutely should be able to work. Now, if your DM says, I'm not going to let anything work through an Autoluke's Resilient Sphere, including even things that just require sight, then your Hypnotic Gaze isn't going to work through the Autoluke's Resilient Sphere, and I would probably look at improved invisibility instead. And then what you could do is you could use improved invisibility, and the target can still hear you, and then you would have disadvantage on all attacks against you. But I do think that if it's allowed, and it should be, Autoluke's Resilient Sphere is the better choice. Once I completed this video, I realized that there were some important things about Autoluke's Resilient Sphere I forgot to talk about, and I really should talk about it, because if anyone is going to make this build, this is going to catch them by surprise if I don't talk about it now. And that is that if you use Autoluke's Resilient Sphere defensively, so you cast it around yourself to protect yourself, then, as I said, I think you can still use your Hypnotic Gaze. But you are stuck in the position that you cast a spell, and if you're not in the right position, then you can move the sphere, but you can't do it with your movement. You have to use your action to move up to half your movement speed. So then what happens is if we want to be in position to use a Hypnotic Gaze, we would have to use our action if that requires us to move. And that's not ideal, because then we would be using our action to move rather than do the Hypnotic Gaze. And then we'd have to wait a round, which of course we don't want to do, and we might not be in position in another round. But what we can do is Autoluke's Resilient Sphere allows for another creature to move the sphere just the same as if we were to do it. So another creature can use its action to move the sphere up to half its movement rate. Now, what the spell doesn't say is how big that creature needs to be or how strong it needs to be. So therefore, as the rules are written and as the spell is written, your familiar can move around you in your Autoluke's Resilient Sphere. So your familiar can move you into position, then you can do the Hypnotic Gaze. The thing is you may have a DM, and I think it's reasonable enough that a DM might say, okay, no, a familiar is just too small. I'm not going to let it work, even though it is technically legal within the rules. It doesn't make a lot of sense that this tiny little familiar can move around your sphere. If you are in that situation, then you need to come up with another solution. And first off, another player, of course, could move you around. But secondly, if you don't have another player to move you around, maybe you have a follower. And if you don't have a follower, then you need to get a follower. And the way you could do that is with Animate Dead. So what you could do is you could switch off one of your spells, probably one of your third level spells, for Animate Dead. And then if you have Animate Dead, then you could have a zombie or a skeleton, and then you could use that zombie or skeleton to move you around, to move you into position so that you could use your Hypnotic Gaze. Now, if none of those solutions are practical for you, then Autoluke's Resilient Sphere isn't the spell for you. Then maybe you want to look at something like an improved invisibility. But I wanted to talk about that because I forgot to talk about it when I initially recorded the video, and I think it's important. Now, I definitely want to prepare both of these spells. So that means I need to unprepare another spell. So the spell I'm going to unprepare is Flaming Sphere. We're getting to the level where I don't think this is worth our concentration anymore. And now I can prepare both Autoluke's Resilient Sphere and Polymorph. These are big power boosts for this character. By level 7, this character is quite versatile and pretty powerful, because we have a lot of spell slots now. By 7th level, you're getting a lot of spell slots. Autoluke's Resilient Sphere, Polymorph are both gangbusters. So Polymorph, of course, is the most powerful buff in the game at this level and for its level. Autoluke's Resilient Sphere allows us to use our really powerful 2nd level subclass ability with complete confidence in our own defense. But if we want to affect mass quantities of enemies, we have options. If there is no allies nearby, we can do our Sleet Storm, cover massive area, and significantly impact the movement, as well as the spell casting, the concentration, and the visibility of enemies. And if they are mixed up with our allies, we can do a slow to do a mass debuff on our enemies. Counterspell, of course, allows us to oppose enemy spellcasters. Mirror Image allows us to up our own defense. I'm not necessarily going to be casting it in the first round in every combat anymore, especially if I'm going to do an Autoluke's Resilient Sphere, then there's really no point to it. Misty Step allows us to get out of a tough situation quickly. Now, this character has Suggestion as well. Remember that Suggestion is based on my charisma, not on my intelligence, which means that the saving throw is a little bit easier. So I wouldn't be using that as much, but it's free, so I might as well use it once in a while. And then first level spells are primarily for our defense. We've got our mage armor, we're going to cast that every day. And if we're adventuring for a long day, potentially 2 times, even 3 times a day if we have to. We've got our shield spell, we've got our absorb element spell, and if we want to save some spell slots, instinctive charm is an option for us. So at 8th level, we're going to get our ability score increase. And what I want to do with this character is I want to be getting that intelligence score up to 20. Because especially once we get to 10th level, you're going to see that we're going to be taking a lot of spells that require saving throws. We already have a lot of spells that require saving throws. And so having our spell DC as high as possible is of huge value to us. Also, remember that increasing your intelligence isn't just about spell DC. It's not just about hitting with spells. It's also about the number of preparations you have. And as you can see, we're already making some tough decisions with preparations, and having a higher intelligence makes those decisions easier for us. So by boosting our intelligence by 2, we now have an 18 intelligence. So we're going to take 2 additional 4th level spells. One of these spells is really about just an investment in higher levels for this character, and that's Charm Monster. So I'm not going to talk too much about it right now. I'm probably not going to prepare it right now, but I'm going to want it. So I'm going to take Charm Monster right now, and then the other one I'm going to take is Dimension Door. I have Misty Step, but I like to have another spell that allows me to teleport with an ally, and Dimension Door is the one that allows me to do that. It also, of course, has a much higher range than Misty Step. So for our preparations, we're going to add in Dimension Door, and we actually get another preparation because of our intelligence score going up. So I am going to prepare Charm Monster right now. Probably not something I'm going to be casting normally, though. So level 9 spells is going to bring us into 5th level spells. And the spells I'm going to take, number 1, I'm going to take Wall of Force, of course. And the second one I'm going to take is Synaptic Static. So this is going to give me an area of effect damage spell. I really don't have any area of effect damage spells up to now. So what it does is we choose a point within 120 feet, and it causes psychic energy to explode in a 20-foot radius. So range and radius very much like a fireball. Creature with intelligence score of 2 or lower can't be affected by the spell, so don't do it against things that are obviously unintelligent, like zombies or anything like that. Target takes 8d6 psychic damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. So again, similar to a fireball, 8d6 damage, except psychic damage, first off, is very, very seldom resisted or immune, and an intelligence saving throw is a much better save to target than dexterity. And after a failed save, target has muddled thoughts for 1 minute. During that time, it rolls a d6 and it subtracts the number rolled from all of its attack rolls and ability checks, as well as its constitution saving throws to maintain concentration. Target can make an intelligence saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success. So potentially what we can do here is, if we have, say, for example, enemy spellcasters, we could hit them with this spell, and they're going to take damage. Then if they fail their saving throw, they're going to have a penalty on concentration saves. And then let's say next round they're concentrating on something, and we hit them with a sleet storm. And now they have to make their concentration saves against our spell DC, which we boosted by increasing our intelligence, and they're going to have a minus d6 on that saving throw. Good luck. But in general, this is a decent blast. It targets a weak saving throw, does a good type of damage, and it has a debuff effect tied onto it. And that debuff effect is kind of important, because the damage of 8d6 at this level is nothing to write home about. So I'm going to want to prepare both these spells. So I'm going to go back to my 4th level spells and unprepare Charm Monster, and then go back into my 5th level and I'll prepare both. Now, which one of these spells do you want to cast? Well, against large groups of similar enemies, Synaptic Static is going to work better for you. Synaptic Static probably also going to work better against spellcasters, especially if you don't know if they have teleport effects. Wall of Force is good against one tough enemy with a number of minions, especially something like smaller dragons and that kind of thing, because you know that they aren't going to have teleport as well. Then 10th level for this character is exceptionally important, and it's the point where we're really going to start to concentrate on enchantment. So we're going to go to 10th level, and what we're going to do is we're going to get an additional ability called Split Enchantment. And as much as Hypnotic Gaze is a signature ability of the Enchanter, if you get to 10th level, Split Enchantment is just as important. Very simple. Starting at 10th level, when you cast an enchantment spell of 1st level or higher that targets only one creature, you can have it target a second creature. So this is a twinned spell effect that is unlimited. We can cast it every time we do an enchantment spell that targets one creature, it targets two instead. So when I've been taking all these single target enchantment spells up to now, this was the reason why. Now we're going to get another cantrip at this level, and I'm going to take Prestidigitation. It really doesn't matter. Take whatever cantrip you like. At this point, we're not casting a whole lot of cantrips anymore, but I'm going to take Prestidigitation with this particular character. Then we're going to pick 2 5th level spells. We are not going to have a lot of preparation slots very, very soon, because all those spells that I've been taking that are single target enchantment spells, I'm going to want to suddenly prepare them. So our preparation slots are about to get really tight. But I want to take yet another single target enchantment spell, and there's 2 options here. The first would be Dominate Person, and the second would be Hold Monster. Neither of these spells do I normally love, but with an Enchanter we are doubling the power of them. And once you double the power of them, suddenly they look a whole lot better. And I'm going to take Hold Monster though, because Dominate Person requires that the targets be humanoid, and so we can't always use it. But Hold Monster pretty much works on anything. So we can cast Hold Monster and it's going to affect 2 targets. So I don't talk about Hold Monster a lot, except when I'm putting it down. But with an Enchanter, I like it. So let's talk about Hold Monster. 90-foot range, uses our concentration. It's going to require a Wisdom save DC 16. Boosting my DC was important to this character because we're going to be casting spells like this, and creatures failing their saving throw is going to make a big difference. We choose a creature that we can see within range. The target must succeed on a Wisdom saving throw or be paralyzed for the duration. Paralyzed is the worst condition you can have. Attacks against you are criticals. The spell has no effect on undead, and at the end of each of its turns, it can make another Wisdom saving throw. On a success, the spell ends against that target. So what we want to do is we want to be twinning this. So then we can use 5th level slot, target 2 creatures. Now, normally with a Hold Monster, if you used a 6th level slot, you could target 2 creatures. We're getting this with a 5th level slot. So the thing here is, you know, I'm not a big fan of spells that target a single creature, and if they make their save, nothing happens. But now Hold Monster is no longer that spell. It's now a spell that targets multiple creatures. So when we target 2 creatures, the chance that one of them is going to fail their saving throw is much, much higher. But because preparations are going to be an issue for us, I'm going to take a ritual with my other spell. So we'll take Rarity's Telepathic Bond. I often take this with one of my 5th level slots, especially at 10th level, because preparations are often tight. And this gives us a strong ritual we can do with a 5th level spell selection. So when we go into our spellbook, we need to make some changes because I want to now prepare Tasha's Hideous Laughter. This is a 1st level spell slot. I now twin it. Creatures, again, 30-foot range, make Wisdom 16 saving throws. If they fail, they're incapacitated and fall prone. That's really good. And yes, they get a saving throw every round, but for a 1st level slot, targeting 2 creatures with this is very powerful. So I definitely want to have it prepared. And now I'm going to have more use for those 1st level slots. So I may want to use my Instinctive Charm even more often so that I can save more 1st level slots so I can twin Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Completely takes out 2 enemies. Doesn't matter what their challenge rating is. Then we're going to go into our 4th level spells, and there's Charm Monster. I want to prepare that too. I got to get rid of something else. So what am I going to get rid of? I'm going to get rid of Polymorph. Polymorph is still a pretty good spell at level 10, but it was really powerful at level 7, and now I want to have Charm Monster. Now remember, Charm Monster doesn't use our concentration, so we can cast it on 2 different creatures and maintain it without concentration. And then at 5th level, I want to have Hold Monster prepared. So what am I going to get rid of? Well, I guess I'll get rid of Synaptic Static. That hurts a bit, but being able to, again, to affect 2 creatures with a Hold Monster, and Hold Monster just wrecks them. If you fail your save against Hold Monster, you're in big trouble. This is really good when we have 2 or 3 or 4 really powerful enemies. And if we could hit two of them with this and they both fail, we've won the combat. But even if one of them fails, that person is absolutely done for. So this is a spell list that you will never see on any other wizard that I make, only on enchanters. Because again, if we think about how much twinned spell costs for a sorcerer, being able to cast it over and over and over again is really something, and we really want to take advantage of it with an enchanter. So it's not just thematically appropriate, it's mechanically advantageous as well. Now, some creatures are immune to charm, so what are we going to do? Well, we'll imprison them in a wall of force, or we'll hit them with a sleet storm. So it's not like we don't have things we can do. We haven't put all our eggs in one basket, but we have invested enough in enchantment single target spells that we have a number of options that use different spell slots. I wouldn't take Hold Monster and Dominate Person because they're going to be competing over the same spell slot. But taking Charm Monster, taking Hold Monster, taking Tasha's Hideous Laughter give us 3 different options to target 2 creatures, get double the effect out of a spell, and in all 3 cases they're using a different level of spell. But we still have a number of other spells prepared for situations where taking 2 creatures out of the combat with an enchantment spell that requires charm effect can't work. So that's the Beguiler up to level 10. In our next video, we are going to discuss the high levels, levels 11 through 20 for the Beguiler, get into those big wizard spells. But this 5 through 10 point, this is the point where I think that the Enchanter really comes together, especially level 10 here. And we are going to ride that wave of being able to target 2 creatures with an enchantment spell for a few levels yet. So it really does bring an Enchanter to another level. Hypnotic Gaze, big boost, but this twin spell effect, also just a huge effect for us. And it's the reason why, when we combine Hypnotic Gaze and Split Enchantment, the reason why I think the Enchanter is amongst the best of the subclasses for a wizard.